You're listening to the Property Management Excellence Podcast for insights that drive rapid rental growth.
Welcome back. It is great to have you with us. Alex Whitlock with you, PMX Podcast. I'm co-founder of Managed. I'm also director of REB. And fresh, coming back from a weekend up at ARIC just fairly recently, which was really good to see so many people up there. I would like to see more emphasis on property management. I think that Nick Georges did a fantastic job running the PM suite. I would like to see it not tucked away upstairs and being more front and center. But that's what PMX is all about. It's really about giving property management the focus that it deserves. And this isn't a sentimental viewpoint of what property management should be. It's a practical view for myself and from the guests that I bring on about how they view property management, what the value proposition is for people who work in property management, and really sort of changing the mindset of really principles that have maybe come from a sales background. I'm not saying they all don't get it. Some certainly do, but there's certainly still a lot of agencies out there where PM is a bit of a second runner. And I think there's a massive missed opportunity. I'm really excited. I'll introduce my guest in a moment. I'm really excited to bring somebody on who really does understand the concept of what a next-gen agency is. When we kicked PMX off last year at a live event in November, we didn't really quite know where it was going to go. We had big awards in the evening. There was one organisation that was very generous in sending down an absolute top BDM. We had a guy called Jordan Slinger down who has a phenomenal hit rate in terms of bringing on new owners onto the platform. And in fact, this agency has grown to a phenomenal size organically. Now, if you're not familiar with this agency, it's called Housemark. I'm really excited to be chatting to Natalie South, who is the CEO of Housemark. Natalie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. Property management is certainly something that we're extremely passionate about. So anything that we can do to add value to the industry and, the people at the forefront of it, we always love to be part of. So really invigorating to meet Jordan. It was Tom Panos who connected us. I wasn't familiar with your agency at the time. It was really refreshing to meet Jordan off stage and to hear him on stage. The energy, focus, professionalism that he has really is a standout thing. But you know what? I think the reality is it's a bit of a sort of a sad state of affairs when he stands out so much in property management. But there are plenty of people like him around on the sales side, but he's got those attributes and he's done an incredible job for you guys. You just give us a little bit of an overview about Housemark, where you started out and where you're taking the business today. Yeah, absolutely. And look, I couldn't agree anymore. Jordan is an absolute phenomenal operator. The journey he's gone on since he joined Housemark just over 2 years ago has been nothing short of incredible. He's grown the Sunshine Coast location from 0 to 450 managements in under 2 years organically. And he's done that through pure hard work, energy, embedding himself in the community. No marketing, no acquisition, truly acceptable. So, absolutely exceptional. So Housemark property management only, 0 to 3,500 properties under management organically in 7 years. Started out of Johnny Bell's garage 7 years ago, which is our founder. I have the pleasure of leading the Housemark organisation. I joined when the business was at 1,000 properties. So over the last 4 years, I've been with Housemark. We've grown from 1,000 to 3,500. And we're now based in Brisbane, Gold Coast, Sunshine Coast, and then we just launched to the Vic market as well. So the people in our organisation are exceptional at what they do, all very different, but all very similar characters in what they imagine the property management industry looking like and what they can build and be known for. And I think that's probably the most common theme around the people we have and what we've built and why we are where we are. It's not, us in the leadership team. It's our collective organisation and having a really crystal clear vision around what property management can and has done for our lives and the people in our communities.
I think there's a fundamental challenge just with the name property management, because it is essentially about managing a property, but it is really not what the proposition about PM is all about. It is about steering and partnering with an owner or an investor to help them gain value from a fairly significant investment in their life or a portfolio of investments. And yes, there is managing the property, but I don't think it really truly reflects what PM is. And I'm interested to hear about your thoughts. And I know I'm very familiar with your success story. I think we're at a very, very interesting time given the proposed changes in the budget. Investors get pushed further and further to the periphery of society. The only friend in the world for an investor is really a PM, because they're the long-term partner with an investor and owner. What's your philosophy and what's your strategy about building your business now in Melbourne?
Yeah, absolutely. And look, the property management industry hasn't come without its challenges. And I completely agree around there's not been enough emphasis put on what is property management actually involve and how important it is and what a massive part it plays in an investor's wealth creation. Whether they decide to go from one property to 2 or 3 can literally be determined by a good property manager giving them a great experience and having a great outcome, versus a poor property manager that maybe hasn't had the support or resources, and that's ended in a really poor result for them, which has meant they've exited the investment market. We really encourage our team here at Housemark, and it's big part of our vision is treating property management like a career, not a job. They're dealing with millions and millions of dollars of people's assets, and they genuinely are impacting whether that landlord builds wealth or whether they don't, on their decision-making, their recommendations, their attention to detail, and the ability to understand where that landlord is in their journey and support them based on that. So it's more than property. It's absolutely people, and understanding those people and where they are in their investment journey plays a massive part on a successful property management experience or potentially a poor one. So that's something we really, really focus on here. And I think that starts with really good intent around property management, understanding that they are, you hear it all the time, oh, I'm just a property manager. Like, people don't take enough pride or value or understand how much impact they make, not just on property, but actually on people.
I think it's a really important point to note. And the value of the relationship between the owner and the PM really needs to be considered very strongly. And I think you're 100% correct. The opportunity and the value in helping somebody with something that may be hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe millions of dollars, is a true responsibility. And being that long-term partner, I continually say your mortgage broker comes and goes. They fulfill a purpose. They help you get the loan. You may use a buyer's agent and they will be there through the buying process. You'll probably be buying off a selling agent and then they're gone. You've got your conveyancers. And then the only perpetual partner for every investor is the property manager. Now, I think that that's a privileged position and a position of responsibility, not because of all of the tasks that need to be done around managing the property, but the opportunity to help steer, guide, be a counselor to the customer. And I think, so I'm an investor and I've never worked in PM. I do work in PM software. And as we said offline, I'm not really a tech person, but I try to help build tech that's easy for people to use. But I am an investor, and every time that I purchase, I'm always uncertain about what it is that I'm purchasing, because you don't know until you've got years stacked on top of the actual asset to know whether it was a good purchase or not, right? So the PM or the BDM or the relationship manager, whatever you want to call yourself in that environment, is so critical. How are you leaning into that in your organization and empowering your people to deliver that service?
Yeah, well, our whole model has been built around that. And I think that has contributed to our success. So for people that know Housemark, know that we have been built off the back of a B2B model. So whilst we don't acquire rent rolls, we work alongside mortgage brokers, sales agents, accountants, wealth advisories, conveyancers, developers, builders. We do a really good job for that one person, and they go and tell many people. So for us in our starting in the growth space, that was a very relationship-based approach. But because our business has been built off B2B, our butt's doubly on the line. We have to do a good job for the landlord so the referral partner continues to recommend us. So with the model we run, everything is relationships first. So we have a phone first approach and email second, which means our senior property managers, they're paid more, they've got more experience, They want to take their landlords out for coffee. They want to do the deep diving. They're there to negotiate, escalate, and build relationships. But that means that they are supported with an executive assistant to help with their tenant communication and their administration. It means they're supported with a junior property manager that's helping them with their entries, exits routine. So I think in the property management industry, we want our property managers to be relationship managers, but we send them out on the road for 70% of the time. They get back to 100 emails, 15 missed phone calls. And it's not that they don't want to do it. They physically can't do it in a day. So we know that coming in and out of the office, popping in and out of tasks is really challenging for a property manager to get deep. So our whole model has been built on let's have the people in office that build relationships, that phone call, that manage maintenance, negotiate lease renewals, understand the client's profile and where they're going on the journey, and get them doing that really well whilst we provide them the support. So essentially an EBU of like the sales world to support them in those other areas that make sure that that business continues to flow.
Fantastic. Natalie, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back in a couple of moments. Welcome back. Great to have you with us. Alex Whitlock. I'm with Natalie South. She's the CEO of Housemark and giving quite an incredible insight into how that business is run. And just going back, I didn't actually pause to comment, but Jordan Slinger building 450 organic owners on the platform, on the office in 2 years is just an incredible achievement. I don't think I've heard of that kind of organic growth anywhere before. Natalie, in the first part, you shared a great deal of insights. What I'd like to do, and as I say, I'm not a PM, so I'd be really curious to get a bit of an insight into sort of how the business is structured from the top down. And by that, how do you deal with leasing, maintenance, the day-to-day property management? What does the BDM team look like, and how do they kind of interact and relate?
Yeah, absolutely. Structure is so important. We believe that a business thrives on people, process, and performance. And as long as you fill those three areas, there's no reason why everyone in each of those departments can't run their lane really, really well. But there's also a really nice synergy. But that starts with having a lot of clarity around who is doing what, and then how is that what getting from here to there, and when is it going from here to there? So when I joined Housemark 4 years ago, the first thing I did was built all of our processes. Every step in the journey in vacate, lease renewal, pet application, change of shared tenancy, every step that needed to transpire, who needed to do it, did it require speaking to a landlord and building a relationship? If it did, it sat with the senior property manager. If it didn't, it went to either the executive assistant or the junior property manager. And then we essentially worked out how do we get it from A to B, B to C. And that platform of process and organizational structure is something that I genuinely believe sets a good business apart from a great. And it's probably an area that I believe not enough principals or leaders put enough emphasis on, which means their team don't have the support and structure to show up and do those most dollar productive parts. With our structure and organizational chart, there's no reason why a property manager shouldn't be building a relationship with the landlord, why a senior property manager shouldn't be making sure that they've got 2 really competitive quotes and they understand those quotes in their entirety before they call the landlord to discuss them with them. So I actually think at a leadership level, Alex, this is something that we can do a lot better as an industry. And I just think it's not because, again, leaders don't want to, but they don't know how to. So if there's anyone listening that is working in a role that maybe doesn't have as much structure, doesn't have enough clarity, and you are feeling like you're getting a little bit lost or overwhelmed in the workflow, I would suggest having a chat to your principal and just start with one process. Just start with the vacate and get that right. And then once you've got the vacate right, you can move on to the next. Process can overwhelm people a lot, but I just always say start and don't let perfection get in the way of progress. Because if you make 1% better every day, in 1 year, you're going to be 365% better than you were at the start of the year. So that has been so important to us in terms of the success is that structure. And that we reference it as the Housemark way. And that's ultimately a set of systems and processes that allows the person in that role to do the most dollar productive activity that allows them to provide an elite level of service to our clients. That's what we reference the Housemark way as.
I think that's fantastic. I'm going to pick up on, there's so much good content there, but I'm going to pick on one small thing, which is almost a sort of a minor thing, phone call first. Now, I'm going to pick that up because most PMs are fearful of getting on the phone, and it's a bit of a vicious cycle. And this comes from a lot of owners don't treat PMs very well. That's a reality, right? But I think it's a symptom of this lack of value loop. So the owner doesn't really understand the value proposition of the PM. All they get is bad news around, more expenses, more expenses, more expenses. So they see that they see their gross yield go down and down and down, and so therefore the PMs become more fearful of picking up the phone because it isn't going to be a good conversation. I think what really encapsulates what you've built there is the fact you've got phone call first. That shows of a confidence in the structure and the value proposition of your agency with your customers. And when you're phone call first, you can deal with so many things so much faster and so much more productively. And I think that's, and another thing I love about the business is you're just PM. You're not sort of a side, sort of a side business to a really powerful sales agency. You're a 3,500 PUM agency built purely on your PM proposition. I was going to ask, and I'm interested to know, without a sales arm, do you have affiliate relationships with other sales agencies in the area? How does that work?
Yeah, we do. And look, sales agents are one of our biggest referral sources. Sales agents without a rent roll, but also sales agents with a rent roll that choose to refer to us directly. And normally that comes down to one, the lack of relationship with their BDM in their office, or two, a lack of confidence around service. Our business development managers, Jordan, Jack, Izzy, and Nick, are all absolutely phenomenal in the relationship building space. They have one job, and that's meet 3 new people or 3 of our existing partners on a daily basis. And we know if we do that, at the end of the 12 months, we'll have hit our organic growth goals. And that hasn't failed us for the last 7 years in a row.
And moving just very quickly to Melbourne, I know you've got an incredibly successful business built very quickly, up in Queensland across 2 different offices. Without putting hard numbers down, what are your goals with moving into the Melbourne market? Where do you see areas of opportunity?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And Alex, the first thing people say when they hear us that we went into Victoria is, why Victoria? It's the hardest state. It's got the most legislation. It's got low fees and it's got low rent, and it's got a really negative sentiment in the market. So when you ask why Victoria, when I get asked that, it's for all of those reasons. It's essentially the ugly stepsister that we want to turn into the cool kid in the states of Australia for property management, which is very much so what our motto has been around property management versus sales. We're really, really excited for Victoria. We have a gut feeling that it's going to take off quicker than Queensland did. And that's for a couple of reasons. 1, we got the blueprint. 2, we understand what works. 3, the partners that we work with in Queensland are buying in Victoria and were the main reason why we made the decision to move into that market. I estimate we'll do, somewhere between 2 to 250 in our first 12 months, but we're forecasting 1,000 properties under management within 3 years, which I know for anyone that is listening in the Victoria market, you would listen to that and go, that's wild, you're not going to achieve it. But there's one partner we're working with, and, they've committed to 1,000 properties in the next 3 years in terms of those properties they're buying. And then we've got those ongoing relationships, and I'm confident that we're going to be able to come into the Vic market and provide a level of service that is different to what maybe they've seen, a different model, the Housemark model. We're taking that to Vic, and understand there's a different culture and different sentiment, and there's going to be some different challenges there. We're certainly not naive to that, but we're certainly up for the challenge. We think we're going to bring a renewed energy that some people will find amazing, and maybe some people will go, oh my God, go away.
I'm absolutely with you. We'll take a quick break, and after the break, I'll tell you exactly why I think that there is a great opportunity in Victoria and particularly in Melbourne. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. Great to have you with us, Alex, with Natalie South from Housemark. We're looking at the Melbourne market, and you know what? See, as a non-property management person, but as an investor, I think there's never been a greater need, particularly in Melbourne, for really, really strong PM. It's so tough being an owner now. The legislation and compliance in Melbourne is so onerous. The changes or the proposed changes to the budget is making investors and owners significantly more uncertain. I'm seeing people, because I buy a lot in Melbourne. I've bought 6 places over the last 12 months because I just love Melbourne. And when I've worked with my PM, who is absolutely superb, and he was actually, I was with him when we spoke at ARIC, really about the owner and PM relationship. But I said to him as an owner, I said, look, are you sure your owners actually want to sell? Because I was buying properties with sort of 7.5 to 8.5% yields there. And he said, look, they're just fatigued and they're ready to sell. But I think in Melbourne and across Australia, and particularly now in this environment, there is such a great opportunity in every market to really connect with and engage with the customer being the owner and also the tenant. So I think that, look, I'm familiar with quite a few agencies down there. And as with property management across Australia, you've got your premium players that are committed to what they do. They're wed to the structure and to the organization, and they deliver to their customers. But I'm afraid to say there's plenty that don't. So I think there's a big opportunity down there.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, we understand that the fees in Melbourne and Victoria are, substantially lower than what we do achieve in Queensland, but we do know where that fee structure needs to sit to make sure that we're not sacrificing the level of service that we need to provide to our rental providers and our renters in the Vic market. And we're very confident that we are going to be able to maintain those fees. And if we can't, well, then we cannot take on that rental provider, because that means that we're going to have to sacrifice the resourcing of our staff, the quality of our staff, and ultimately the level of service. And we're just not willing to do that in any market, but specifically a market where it costs more to manage a property. It's harder. Staff are fatigued, the legislation, the compliance requirements. It is substantially harder to have a property in Victoria right now managed than what it is in any other state, which means we need to be paying our staff better. We need to be supporting them better. We need to have better leadership, more training, not be cutting fees and having lower fees around securing business. That's something we're very passionate about as we make our mark in Victoria.
But you put your value, Natalie, you put your value proposition first. And there's an agent that we know very well down there, Alice Shearer. He charges 7+% fees because, and like yourselves, there is just this cohort of very, very switched on professionals that actually see value in what they do. And when you see value and you can convey it to your customers, a 7% fee, an 8% fee, or whatever becomes, it does not become a deciding factor as to whether to use that agency or not. It's when you don't convey value, then, I think certain providers start to discount and hope to get them on a lower fee base. So I think you might be pleasantly surprised with the way you're structured, with the engagement with customers. And I caught up with Alistair. We did a podcast with him a while ago, and he would do the same as yourselves, had a very in-depth interview with their owners, identified their objectives, got to understand where they were going with their property, got to understand how much they understood about the potential for their property, and then explained the value they would add. And he said that when he told his customers that it was 7.5%, they said, oh, okay, I thought it was going to be higher. So, it's a funny thing. If there is value in a relationship, you'll pay the price. And I think that the way that the people that you've hired, the proposition you've got, I think you'll do well down there.
And I think too, because with our model, when we come from a recommended source, so if a rental provider has spent $10,000, $15,000 or $20,000 on engaging a buyer's advocate to purchase them an asset, they see value in having a professional team around them. So when we get recommended from a partner, we already start at a higher place of trust because we've demonstrated value to them through previous clients. So, our fee in Victoria is 7.7%, and we've currently got.
Okay, well, there you go. That's good.
7.7 inclusive, and we currently have 65 clients under management, and we're onboarding currently anywhere between 15 to 25 a month, and we think month on month we'll continue to see that perform. And I think you're right, Alex. It's around be able to demonstrate value, and the difference in 1% on the average rent in Victoria is $580, is $5.80 a week. And I think together the Vic market can continue to rise and hold their fees and demonstrate value. So that way the industry as a whole in that market can be respected more, less fatigued, have more training, and take a lot more pride in what they do.
It's my view, and this is my personal opinion, that we will see. I think property management the rent roll business is absolutely ready for change, and that's not because of all the fantastic people that work in property management and work extremely hard, but I think it's because of the nature of the fragmented types of businesses that build a bit of a rent roll here and don't really know why they're doing it and aren't really committed. And I see the future personally of being organizations that can scale through structure, that can roll out value across, sort of multiple suburbs or even multiple offices, and that can convey that value to their owners. And I think owners are looking for that value proposition, because I don't think personally I would happily pay that kind of fee if my PM could articulate the value. But I would also, from my PM, expect guidance above and beyond. I want. Look, there is legislation issues around what constitutes advice. I'm not talking about where I should be buying, but really in terms of my property, I want somebody that can tell me, can explain to me the importance of depreciation, to give me an insight. They don't have to be an accountant, but to give me some insights into, why I should spend money on maintenance, what the most effective way is to deal with maintenance, whether I should do some capital improvements and how that's going to impact on the yield. So there's a huge opportunity sitting there with this. It's not property management. It is, but it's not. It's the owner and the asset manager relationship that I think is starting to emerge.
Yeah, and look, I think with property management, they've got so much going on with the day-to-day that without some change in the way we model our teams, or the support we give, or the education we give, it will be challenging for the industry to change in that aspect. In our Queensland location, we have a department called Investment Services. Investment Services is there to help our landlords consider if they should do renovations on their property. If they were to do a renovation on that property, how much extra rent would they get? How much would that increase the capital value? What would be the return on investment? Where would they get those funds from? Would we do a refinance and do an equity withdrawal so it becomes tax deductible? If they're looking at buying again, we won't buy for them, but do they have a recommended buyer's advocate? Because we're big believers in that. If a landlord is looking to selling, why Investment Services will call? Why are they selling? Lift your eyes up. Market's going to increase. We're in a tough time. Can we refinance and extend your loan from 25 years to 30 years so we can reduce your costs? Can we increase your rent rather than selling the property to get you a better net return? So we have a department that handles that works in very close proximity with our landlords to provide that next level of service. Where are they in their property journey? Where do they want to be? And what's the gaps with their property portfolio right now that we can support outside of day-to-day property management?
There is such an opportunity to deliver those insights, I can tell you. And one of the things that always makes me smile is people talk about their owners or investors, but owners and investors, they're just people that happen to have an investment property. Most of them don't really know and understand, and they're kind of left alone. Once all the the adrenaline of the deal is done, it's the agency that works with them that is their only partner. And whether it's the individual or as the agency as an organization, can be with them on that long-term journey. Here's the thing, right? You may have an owner on your rent roll for 20, 30, 40 years. If it's in a trust, it could be a generational thing, and then owners talk, investors talk. And when you get great service and great support around a really complex area, they talk to other owners and referrals come through naturally. So you're absolutely bang on the money there.
Yeah. And look, like I've said a couple of times, Alex, I really believe this starts at a leadership level. It's something we put a lot of emphasis on. The people we have in our organisation are absolutely incredible. Some coming from entry-level roles with no experience to now senior property managers that get to live flexibly. I've got one senior property manager. She's got a daughter that's going to Cairns for a polo competition. And I 100% trust her, and her landlords trust her to go and work remotely at Cairns for a week. She'll send an email out to her landlord saying, hey, I'm working flexibly. I'm at my daughter's carnival. I might respond at 5 a.m. I might respond at 8 p.m. But she's built that trust, those relationships, and we've given her that flexibility and empowered her to live her best life while building herself a career professionally. It's something, flexibility, career progression. We call it Uber planning, which is pathways. Jordan's gone from an employee to a business owner. Nick DeRosa's gone from an employee to a business owner. I've had people go from property managers to team leaders. So I think we have a responsibility as leaders, as directors, as owners of rent rolls to continue to give our property managers the support they need, to give them the resources, to give them the training, to set the standards around culture and service standards around what we expect our clients to receive, because ultimately that starts with us. And if the sales director of that property management industry doesn't care about sales, how can you expect your property managers to care about the clients and the outcomes? So what I would love to see is at a leadership level, leaders take a lot more responsibility around how much we are impacting millions of people across Australia in our organisation, outside of our organisation, every tenant and renter that has a roof over their head, that we pay a really big impact on people's lives in the property management industry.
The future is so bright, and I think you've encapsulated, without thinking about it, exactly what your organisation and also your own mindset is. Natalie, it's been an absolute pleasure catching up. I'm so grateful for you taking time out, particularly when you're, in the process of setting up a new office. It's been fantastic catching up with you. Thank you.
My absolute pleasure. Thanks so much.
For everyone else, thank you so much for tuning in. We love having you with us. There are plenty of other podcasts there. If you haven't listened to previous ones, go and check them out. We'll catch you next week.
The information featured in this podcast is general in nature and does not take into consideration your financial situation or individual needs and should not be relied upon. Before making any investment, insurance, tax, property, or financial planning decision, you should consult a licensed professional who can advise whether your decision is appropriate for you. Guests appearing on this podcast may have a commercial relationship with the companies mentioned.